What is the difference between a commercial bank and a central bank? The first point is the meaning. Central bank is the topmost, apex, supreme, number one head institution in a country. It is the bank of all the banks of the country. For the common masses, we have a bank. Similarly, all the banks in a country have a bank to look forward to. That is the central bank. It is the head of all the banks in the country. It is the head of all the entire monetary structure of the country. Each and every commercial bank has to work under the guidelines of the central bank. Central bank controls all other banks of the country. The operations of all the commercial banks, the regulation, everything is handled by the central bank. The directions for the entire banking system is in the hands of the central bank. So it is considered the main supreme apex institution of the banking system of a nation. When we talk of the commercial bank, it is that financial institution which works under the central bank. It accepts deposit from the general masses. People like you and me, we go to deposit money in a commercial bank. Apart from this, commercial bank offers loan to the people, to the general masses. This loan can be for consumption purpose. I have to build a house. I have to conduct a marriage ceremony in my home. So whatever consumption loan is given as per as investment purpose. Now I want to start a business. I want to do some investment anywhere. I can take a loan from the commercial bank. So the loan is offered to the general public. Deposits are accepted from the general public. So this is the main function of commercial bank. Commercial bank is a one constituent unit of the banking system of a country. Second point is the ownership. The central bank is 100% owned and controlled by the government of the country. It is called a state-owned institution. Here, the word state means the government. Commercial bank, it can be owned and governed by the government, which is called the public sector banks. And the commercial banks can also be owned and governed by the private sector. This is called private sector banks. So, the central bank is a state-owned institution owned and controlled by the government. But the commercial bank, it can be state-owned, it can be owned by the government, and it can be private-owned as well. Next point is the status. Just as I told you, central bank is the apex supreme institution in the money market. Nothing is over the central bank. But commercial bank has to work under the control of the central bank, and it is one unit. It is considered as a one constituent unit of the banking structure of a nation. So clearly, the status of the central bank is way higher in the monetary system of a country. Next is the number of banks. There will be only one central bank in a country because it is very distinct and particular nature. The work assigned to the central bank is so important that there is supposed to be only one central bank of a country. If there is more than one central bank, it will be very difficult how to give guidelines, how to give instructions to the commercial banks. So it is better that there should be only one institution, the head institution, there is only one central bank. But the commercial banks, there can be numerous commercial banks in the country. There are so many to mention: SBI, OBC, HDFC. There can be n number of banks, commercial banks in a country. Now, the most important thing is that the central bank has the authority of the sole monopoly. Nobody else can do this. Issue of currency is done by central bank and only central bank can do it. Nobody else, no other bank, no other institution of the country can issue currency. But the commercial bank has no such power as regards to the issue of currency. Central bank has no direct dealing with the public, with the general masses. No, you cannot go and deposit money there. You cannot go and offer ask for a loan there. No, public dealing is not done by central bank. All these dealings of the general masses is done by the commercial bank. Next is the objective. Central bank does not work with the profit motive. The objective is the public interest. The primary aim is to achieve the objectives of the economic policy of the government. So the running government will be laying down its own economic policy. How does it want the nation to go to? So keeping that economic policy in mind, central bank will give the directions to the commercial banks, and all its objectives, all its aims are directed to achieve that policy of the government. Underlining the statement that public welfare, maximization of public welfare is the main objective of the central bank. But when we talk of the commercial bank, it works to maximize its profit, and they want more and more profit. That is their primary objective. If we talk about control, central bank is the direct control. It controls the entire banking structure of the country. It controls all the commercial banks of the country. It is empowered to exercise control over each and every unit of the banking system. But the commercial bank, it has to function under the guidelines, under the supremacy of the central bank. When we talk of competition, central bank has no competition whatsoever with any other institution. It helps other banking institutions by acting as a lender of the last resort. If there is any problem for any commercial bank, they can easily have an access to the central bank, and central bank readily helps them. So there is no competition with any bank as far as central bank is concerned. But commercial banks, they do compete with each other. Every commercial bank wants to maximize its own profit. So it may be alluring its customers and the clients with different schemes. The aim is to maximize profit. Next point is the foreign exchange. Central bank is considered as the custodian of foreign exchange reserves of the country. But for the commercial bank, in the matters, the approval of central bank is must. If at all the commercial bank will be dealing in foreign exchange, you have to take the approval and the guideline of the central bank. Only then commercial bank can function as a dealer of foreign exchange. Next is the clearing house. The central bank controls the credit and the functions of other banks as a clearing house. So just as I told you, if there is any problem with any of the commercial banks as to clearing, as to credit, it can have an access to the central bank, and central bank is ready to help them. Commercial bank may perform this function of clearing house, but just as a representative of the central bank. It cannot carry these functions on its own. Next point is the banker of the banks. The central bank is the banker of the commercial banks. It is a banker to the government, but it doesn't deal with general public. That is it. But commercial banks, they are supposed to keep a certain percentage of their total deposit with the central bank, certain cash. This is called cash reserve. And commercial bank is not a banker to the government. Commercial bank is a banker to the general public. Next is the bank of the government. All the banking work of the government is conducted by the central bank, keeping in view, keeping as objective the economic policies of the government. But commercial bank, this may function as the representative of the central bank for the government works. So in general, all the banking work of the government is conducted by the central bank. But if central bank asks any particular commercial bank to perform certain functions, it may do so. But in this context also, it will be working as a representative of the central government for the government works. Next point is the emergency. Central bank helps all the commercial banks if any emergency arises, because it is the head of all the banks of the country, of the banking system. But commercial banks, they don't perform any such function, no emergency help for any other bank. Commercial bank just sticks to its basic function, and it has to do all the work under the control and the guideline of the central bank. So here we come to the end of the article. I hope I have explained the things clearly to you. In case you have any doubts, please feel free to ask in the comment section. Like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching. Stay safe, stay blessed.